The moment I walked into my apartment, a strange mix of anticipation and dread tightened in my chest. The city's noise filtered faintly through the cracked window, but inside everything was still, my secret world waiting quietly for me. My name is Alex. To the world, I'm an ordinary college student, punctual, polite, unremarkable. But behind closed doors, I live another life. A life painted in soft fabrics, delicate lace, and high heels that make my heart race. Crossdressing isn't just a hobby for me, it's a thrill that lingers in the corners of my mind, a secret I guard fiercely. Tonight, with Isabella away visiting her parents, the temptation was impossible to resist. My apartment smelled faintly of lavender and books, the clutter of textbooks and sketchpads scattered across the room. Everything here tells the story of my dual existence, the careful balance between the person the world sees and the one I hide. On the bed lay a set of carefully chosen clothing, each piece selected to evoke both beauty and vulnerability, a soft blouse, a pleated skirt, and stockings that clung like whispers. My fingers traced the textures, the silky smoothness sending shivers through me. The thrill was intoxicating. Dressing up wasn't just about appearance, it was a ritual of transformation. With each layer, I felt a piece of the ordinary Alex peel away, replaced by someone else. Someone daring, delicate, and dangerously exposed. When I slipped into the skirt, I felt a strange surge of power intertwined with fear. The reflection in the mirror stared back, and for the first time in weeks, I saw not Alex, the cautious student, but a version of myself untethered, vulnerable, and alive. A message on my phone made my pulse spike. Alex, I have a new exercise for you tomorrow. Be ready to explore. Deeply. It was from Ms. Evelyn Hart, my psychology professor. Brilliant, poised, and mesmerizing, she commanded attention effortlessly. Her hypnosis seminar had been fascinating, but her message hinted at something more personal, something that made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't ignore. Ms. Hart had always had a way of seeing people, not just who they were, but who they could become under the right guidance. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for the heels tucked under the bed. The thought of walking in them, of feeling the subtle sway they forced upon my posture, made my chest tighten with a mix of excitement and fear. I imagined her voice, calm and commanding, guiding me, bending my focus, teasing out this hidden desire I barely admitted to myself. The idea of being shaped, watched, tested, thrilled me in ways I wasn't ready to name aloud. Isabella's absence made the apartment feel simultaneously safe and treacherous. I loved her deeply, but she had no idea about this part of me. The thought of her discovering my secret, of judgment, confusion, or worse, made my stomach knot. And yet, the pull of curiosity, the lure of the forbidden, pushed me forward. Slipping into the blouse, adjusting the skirt, and pulling on stockings, I became a different Alex entirely. Every movement, every sound of fabric against skin, sent a surge of adrenaline through me. I paused before the mirror, heart hammering. The reflection was hypnotic. Eyes wide with nervous excitement, lips slightly parted, every detail whispered of the secret life I craved to live more fully. There was fear there, yes, but it was mingled with something else, empowerment. I wasn't just playing dress-up, I was stepping into a world that challenged every rule I had followed, every boundary I had respected. Tonight, it wasn't enough to simply dress. I needed to imagine the next step, the hypnotic influence Ms. Hart might wield, the way her gaze could strip away hesitation, bending my thoughts toward a version of myself I had barely dared to explore. Would she see me as vulnerable prey, or as someone daring enough to embrace the thrill of transformation? That question burned hotter than the heat rising in my chest. I sank onto the edge of the bed, skirt brushing my knees, heels in hand, mind racing with possibilities. My secret wasn't just about clothing or appearance, it was about exposure, control, and surrender. Each item of clothing, every delicate piece of fabric, represented a step deeper into a world of risk and exhilaration, a world where I could be both seen and invisible at once. The city outside hummed with life, but inside time slowed. Every heartbeat echoed loudly in the quiet apartment, and I realized with a shiver that this night marked the start of something irreversible. My identity, my desires, and my fears were about to collide with Ms. Hart's hypnotic influence, pushing me toward experiences I hadn't imagined and emotions I wasn't prepared to confront. As I stood before the mirror, adjusting the skirt one final time, I felt a mix of fear, excitement, and inevitability. The reflection staring back was no longer just Alex. It was someone on the edge of discovery, someone ready to be molded, challenged, and transformed. The first step had been taken, and there was no turning back. Tonight would be the night my secret life collided with hypnotic power, desire, and suspense. And once it began, every choice, every risk, and every thrill would shape me in ways I couldn't yet comprehend. The next morning, sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds, casting slatted shadows across my cluttered apartment. I had barely slept. My mind was tangled with thoughts of last night's secret indulgence, the silky blouse, the skirt that clung just so, the thrill of stepping into someone who existed only behind closed doors. Yet, a sharper anticipation gnawed at me now. Miss Hart's message was in my mind like a pulse: be ready to explore, deeply. Every time I imagined her voice, calm yet commanding, I felt a shiver of both fear and exhilaration. I dressed quickly but carefully, choosing clothes that were neutral, inconspicuous, hiding the night's indulgence while keeping me presentable for class. But as I moved through my apartment, I could feel the other Alex, the one in lace and stockings, lurking just beneath the surface, impatient, alive. My reflection in the mirror caught me mid-step, and I flinched, half expecting to see her there, not me. I shook my head. The tension between these two identities was growing. Each heartbeat reminded me how fragile my secret was and how intoxicating it could feel to flirt with its exposure. When I stepped into the lecture hall, my stomach twisted. Miss Hart's gaze was sharp, as always, sweeping across the room with that uncanny ability to make each student feel seen, and perhaps, subtly tested. My mind raced. Was she aware of me? Of my fascination? Could she sense the tremor in my voice, the flush in my cheeks, the way my hands itched with a need I couldn't explain? I sank into a seat near the back, trying to appear calm, casual, unremarkable. But her eyes landed on me, unavoidable, piercing, and I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. The hypnosis seminar began. Her voice was smooth, measured, almost hypnotic even without intent. She spoke of the mind's malleability, of suggestion, and of the thin line between control and freedom. I listened, enthralled, heart racing. Every word seemed to brush against a hidden corner of my psyche, teasing out thoughts I hadn't dared to confront. Then, a volunteer exercise was announced, and my pulse jumped when she met my gaze. "Alex," she said, her voice crisp, with that edge of command that made it impossible to resist. "I think you're ready to experience something unique." My throat went dry. The room seemed to shrink. Everyone else faded into a blur, leaving only her, the sharp, authoritative presence that both terrified and fascinated me. I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears, each beat like a drum of warning and excitement. I wanted to protest, to shrink away, to refuse, but my body betrayed me, moving forward before my mind had decided. She guided me to the center of the room, asking me to focus on her voice, on the rhythm of her words. Her instructions were precise, subtle, and impossible to resist. I felt my limbs relax, my mind lightening, thoughts dissolving into the cadence of her speech. It was strange, disorienting, intoxicating. I was aware of my surroundings, yet distant, as if floating above my own body. Her words wrapped around me like silk. "You trust me. You follow my guidance. You enjoy the change, the transformation." And just like that, the thrill of last night, the skirt, the blouse, the heels, came rushing back with intensity, amplified, magnified. I wasn't just imagining it anymore. I could feel it. My senses sharpened, every touch, every sound heightened. The skirt I had worn in secret seemed to exist all over again in my mind, tangible, impossible to resist. She instructed me to describe a version of myself I wanted to explore, and without thinking, I spoke the truth. I want to see myself as someone delicate, graceful, more me than I let anyone see. My voice was trembling, but honest. She nodded, a faint smile curving her lips, approval shining in her eyes. "Good," she whispered. "You're ready to become more visible, more real, and more desired." The sensation was electric. I could feel a warmth spreading through me, an unfamiliar confidence paired with intense vulnerability. The idea of crossdressing, of slipping into a persona that demanded attention, that invited both scrutiny and admiration, wasn't just appealing, it was overwhelming. I imagined the silky fabric of a blouse against my skin, the sway of a skirt, the precise tilt of heels guiding my posture, shaping my confidence, transforming my gait. Each detail seemed to awaken a side of me I had kept hidden, the thrill of secrecy intensifying every sensation. The seminar continued, but I was caught in a whirlwind. Each suggestion, each subtle gesture from Ms. Hart pulled me deeper. She spoke of identity, of control, of exploring desires safely yet boldly. She guided my focus to the mirror she had set up for the exercise. My reflection shimmered differently, more vulnerable, more alive. I noticed the smallest details, the curve of my hips, the tilt of my shoulders, the way my chest rose with each breath. Every line, every shadow, highlighted aspects of myself I had denied hidden, and yet secretly craved to display. By the time the session ended, I was both exhilarated and shaken. The normal Alex, the one everyone knew, was still there, buried beneath layers of self-control. But the other Alex, the one in skirts, stockings and delicate blouses, was awake, alert, hungry for expression. I left the room in a daze, my mind racing with fantasies, fears, and the vivid memory of Ms. Hart's hypnotic voice wrapping around me like a second skin. Back in my apartment, the private Alex demanded attention. I couldn't resist. I retrieved the outfit I had chosen last night, running my fingers over the fabrics, feeling the thrill of anticipation build. Slipping into the skirt, adjusting the blouse and tugging on the stockings, I felt a shiver of recognition. This version of myself was ready, awake, and craving more. The reflection in the mirror was breathtaking, alarming, almost dangerous. It wasn't just clothing, it was transformation. My hands shook slightly as I fastened the heels, each click against the floor echoing through the silent apartment like a heartbeat. I moved slowly, deliberately, testing the sway of my hips, the curve of my posture. My mind whirled with thoughts of Ms. Hart, of what she could do, of the power she wielded so effortlessly. Then, as if to confirm the stakes, a knock came at the door. My heart jumped violently. Isabella? I froze, eyes wide, breath caught. But it wasn't her. It was my neighbor, needing something trivial, but in that moment, every instinct screamed danger. The adrenaline surged, mixing with the thrill of being exposed, the electric fear that someone might see this side of me. I managed a casual smile, answered the door, and returned to my reflection. The skirt swayed, the blouse clung perfectly, and I realized that I was teetering on the edge, not just between identities, but between secrecy and revelation, safety and surrender. And deep down, I craved the edge. The moment the apartment door closed behind the neighbor, a shiver ran through me. The heels clicked against the floor with a resonance that made my heartbeat echo in my ears. Alone again, I allowed myself to linger in the reflection. The Alex in the mirror was no longer hesitant or cautious, she was deliberate, poised, and breathtakingly exposed. Every movement carried a new confidence, yet each step reminded me of my vulnerability. The thrill of crossdressing had escalated into something nearly unbearable. My phone buzzed, a new message from Ms. Hart. Good progress today. Tonight, imagine yourself stepping fully into your persona. Let the transformation deepen. My pulse quickened. Each word felt like a command though typed. The hypnotic tone carried across pixels, and I found myself obeying before thinking. I traced my hands over the blouse, over the skirt's pleats, imagining her guiding my mind, molding my desires. The idea that she could push me further, coaxing out a side I had barely acknowledged, sent a tremor of excitement through me. I moved through my apartment like a performer preparing for an audience, every gesture amplified by anticipation. Adjusting my stockings, I felt the delicate fabric stretch across my legs, and a subtle heat rose to my cheeks. My reflection watched me intently, a stranger who was undeniably me. I tilted my head, testing the sway of my hips in the heels, imagining Ms. Hart's voice whispering instructions in my ear. The sensation of balance and grace, something I had never experienced outside this secret world, made me dizzy, intoxicated, alive. But along with the exhilaration came a sharp, piercing awareness of the stakes. Isabella's absence no longer felt protective, it felt like a countdown. Any unexpected sound, any knock at the door, could reveal everything. The duality of fear and thrill intertwined, each heightening the other. My hands shook slightly as I adjusted my skirt for the third time, the lace brushing against my skin like fire. The reflection was mesmerizing, frightening, yet impossible to turn away from. I sank onto the edge of the sofa, heels dangling from my fingers. I closed my eyes, imagining Ms. Hart's calm, commanding voice filling the room, guiding me into deeper relaxation. You are safe. You are becoming. You are beautiful. Each phrase seemed to seep into my consciousness, pulling me into a trance-like state. My body responded without thought. The skirt swayed, my posture adjusted, and a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. I was being molded, subtly but unmistakably, into a persona that demanded attention, that blurred the line between Alex and this secret self. I opened my eyes, and the reflection startled me. The face staring back was delicate, carefully composed, and entirely different from the sleepy, ordinary student I had been that morning. The eyes mine, yet impossibly larger, framed with subtle makeup I hadn't applied yet, shone with vulnerability and allure. I traced my fingers along my jawline, over my cheekbones, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. Not by the world, but by a version of myself I had never dared to acknowledge. The thrill was electric, but it carried a dangerous edge. Each motion in front of the mirror, every subtle adjustment, reminded me how fragile this illusion was. One misstep, one unexpected interruption, could shatter it entirely. I imagined Isabella walking in, her expression unreadable. Panic and desire mingled, and I realized the very act of dressing, of transforming, had become a tightrope walk between exposure and exhilaration. I decided to push further. The heels went back on, this time deliberately, each click on the hardwood floor echoing like a drumbeat in an empty hall. I practiced walking, swaying, shifting my weight subtly, testing the limits of my balance and grace. Every step felt like a declaration, a quiet rebellion, and yet also an invitation. My reflection mirrored my movements perfectly, but there was a deeper tension now. Alex was splitting into two personas, each aware of the other, yet dependent on the other to maintain equilibrium. Then came the subtle, insistent thought, what if Miss Hart were here now? The fantasy overtook me. I imagined her stepping into the room, calm and assured, eyes scanning, voice soft but commanding, show me. Let me guide you fully. The image sent a shiver down my spine. I allowed my body to respond to this imagined instruction, hips tilting, shoulders adjusting, hands moving delicately over fabric. Each movement brought a flush of heat, a rush of adrenaline, and a thrill that was as frightening as it was addictive. The boundaries between imagination and reality began to blur. My reflection seemed almost alive, responding to a voice no one else could hear. I whispered my own consent, my own willingness to be molded, shaped, observed. Yes. I want to become her favorite. I want to be beautiful and perfect. The words trembled on my lips, yet I meant every syllable. The room seemed to pulse in response, the air thick with anticipation. A sudden noise outside the window, a car door slamming, a dog barking, snapped me briefly back to the present. Panic surged, heart racing violently. My secret self, poised and delicate, froze in the mirror. The heels felt suddenly precarious, the skirt seemed heavier, the blouse tighter. The reality of exposure intruded, and I realized that thrill was inseparable from fear. Every step further into transformation carried risk, and the risk itself fueled desire. I sank to the floor, knees tucked under the skirt, tracing the fabric in my hands. My mind replayed Ms. Hart's seminar, her hypnotic voice guiding me into deeper awareness, deeper surrender. You are becoming more visible, more attentive, more desirable. The phrases etched themselves into my consciousness. My body responded instinctively, adjusting posture, tilting head, shifting weight, all without conscious thought. I was being shaped, crafted, and each motion, each subtle shift, intensified the duality of fear and exhilaration that held me captive. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time seemed meaningless. The city outside continued its relentless rhythm, but I was suspended in a world of silk, stockings, heels, and whispered commands. Each breath, each heartbeat, carried me deeper. By the time evening arrived, my private transformation felt complete. The reflection was no longer just a reflection. It was a promise, a secret self alive with beauty, tension, and peril. And somewhere, in the back of my mind, a tiny, trembling voice whispered, this was only the beginning. The apartment was quiet, almost suffocatingly so. Shadows stretched across the walls, distorted and long, as if they themselves were waiting for something to happen. I stood in front of the mirror again, the reflection staring back at me like a stranger I couldn't escape. The Alex in skirts and heels, delicate and poised, moved with a confidence I couldn't reconcile with the trembling in my chest. Every step, every sway of my hips, was a defiance, a challenge to the ordinary version of myself. And yet, the thrill was now tainted with fear. Tonight, Miss Hart's influence wasn't a distant idea, it was real, tangible, and closer than ever. The phone buzzed. A message from Miss Hart. Are you ready to take the next step? Imagine me here, guiding you fully. You're almost my favorite. My stomach twisted. Almost? The word struck a nerve. It was playful, teasing, but loaded with power. I imagined her standing there, calm, poised, eyes piercing into mine. My reflection seemed to respond, tilting its head, a faint smile playing on delicate lips I hadn't recognized as my own until now. I felt my body obey instinctively, shoulders back, chest lifted, hips swaying with a rhythm I didn't consciously control. And then it happened. A knock at the door, sharp, insistent. My heart leapt violently. Isabella? A friend? My neighbor again? Panic surged. I froze, heels clicking against the hardwood as I tried to steady my breathing. The reflection in the mirror didn't hesitate. It was poised, perfect, almost mocking in its composure. The duality of who I was, the hidden Alex and the exposed Alex, clashed violently. One part of me wanted to run, hide, erase every trace of this transformation. The other part craved the exposure, the risk, the thrill. I forced myself to the door, moving slowly, deliberately, trying to keep the skirt from swaying too obviously, the blouse from shifting. The door opened, and a college classmate, Michael, stood there wide-eyed, holding a textbook. "Oh, hey Alex," he said, his tone casual, but the pause, the way his eyes flicked downward betrayed curiosity. "I just, dropped by to borrow notes." My mind raced. Notes? Was he joking? Did he notice? The reflection in the mirror seemed to grin. The thrill surged, mingled with terror. Yeah, of course," I stammered, voice unsteady but controlled. I stepped aside, letting him in, each step measured, every sway of my hips a deliberate performance. Michael didn't comment, but the air was charged. He fumbled with his backpack, and I realized with a jolt that one misstep, one accidental glance, one misread expression, could reveal everything. The apartment felt smaller, more claustrophobic, yet the reflection in the mirror reminded me, I was deliberate, poised, transformed. After he left, heart still racing, I turned fully to the mirror. The reflection wasn't just a reflection. It was a warning, a challenge. My body and mind trembled with the intoxicating mix of fear and thrill. Miss Hart's message replayed in my head, her imagined voice guiding me further. "You are becoming more visible, more attentive, more desired." I sank onto the sofa, heels dangling, and let the tension wash over me. But the calm was fleeting. The knock at the door came again, this time heavier, insistent, almost demanding. My pulse spiked violently. I wasn't expecting anyone, except perhaps Miss Hart herself, or worse, Isabella. And then the unthinkable, the door swung open, and there she was. Miss Hart, standing calmly, impossibly poised, eyes scanning the room with a sharp, knowing look. My breath caught. The thrill, the fear, the absolute vulnerability of being caught in the act surged like wildfire. "Alex," she said, voice smooth and commanding. "I see you've been exploring. Very good." I froze, unable to move. My reflection stared back at me, the delicate poised figure trembling slightly, aware of every heartbeat. Miss Hart stepped further inside, her presence overwhelming, hypnotic. "Tonight, you'll follow my guidance fully. No hesitation, no holding back." I felt my body respond automatically, heels clicking against the floor as I obeyed, hips tilting, posture perfect. My voice trembled as I whispered, "Yes, I'll follow you." She smiled faintly, approving, almost predatory. "Good. Now, let's begin." The next hours blurred into a whirlwind of sensation and instruction. She guided me through subtle postures, gentle corrections, whispered commands that shaped my thoughts and movements. Every adjustment, Every sway of my hips, every tilt of my shoulders reinforced the transformation. I felt entirely exposed yet impossibly confident, delicate yet commanding attention without realizing it. The hypnotic influence was absolute. I had no choice but to obey, to embrace the persona I had been nurturing in secret. Then came the test. A sudden knock at the door, a real one this time, sharper, more urgent. Isabella. My stomach sank. Panic surged. The heels felt precarious, the skirt clinging in ways that made me hyper-aware of every movement. Ms. Hart's eyes met mine, calm and commanding. Control your fear. Embrace the persona. You are becoming my favorite. I obeyed, moving toward the door, each step precise, deliberate. The click of heels against hardwood was like a drumbeat of suspense. Isabella's voice rang out, calling my name. My hands shook, but my posture, my poise, my very presence commanded attention. When I opened the door, she froze, eyes wide, shock written across her face. I swallowed, voice trembling yet composed. Hi, Isabella. She didn't move, didn't speak. The tension was unbearable. Every second stretched, every heartbeat thundered. Then Miss Hart's whisper in my mind, this is your moment. Own it. Show them who you truly are. I felt a surge of daring. I stepped forward slightly, tilting my head, a confident, graceful sway in my hips. Isabella's gaze flickered downward, taking in the subtle heels, the skirt, the blouse perfectly arranged. Her mouth opened slightly, surprise and disbelief mingling. The silence stretched. I realized something profound. This was the culmination of every secret, every desire, every risk I had taken. I was visible, exposed, yet more myself than ever. And in that moment, I knew the hypnotic influence had pushed me to a precipice. One where fear and desire collided, one where my dual identities merged into something daring, vulnerable, and thrillingly real. Then, just as I felt the tension peak, a subtle shift, the skirt snagged on the edge of the doorframe. My heart leapt. A blush burned my cheeks. Isabella's gaze sharpened. I froze, breath caught, the world narrowing to a single heartbeat. Miss Hart's influence whispered again, stay calm. Own it. This is your transformation. I adjusted smoothly, masking the stumble, and smiled faintly. The moment passed, but the energy lingered, electric, charged, dangerous. I realized that the risk, the exposure, the thrill, it was intoxicating. And I also knew, once this moment ended, nothing would ever be the same. The persona I had nurtured in secret was alive, potent, and ready for the next challenge. The apartment was still again, but it felt heavier, charged with the aftermath of the night's tension. Isabella had left, still silent, her expression unreadable, leaving a trail of questions in her wake. I sank onto the sofa, heels clicking softly as I slid them off, skirt brushing my knees. My reflection in the mirror caught my eye, and I froze. The delicate, poised Alex stared back, confident, exposed, trembling, and utterly transformed. Every inch of fabric, every tilt of posture, every subtle sway of hips spoke of a self I had barely dared to claim before tonight. My phone buzzed. A message from Ms. Hart, excellent progress, Alex. You've embraced it beautifully. But tomorrow holds the true test. Are you ready? The words both thrilled and terrified me. A test? What could be more intense than tonight? The near exposure to Isabella, the hypnotic control, the full immersion into this persona. My heartbeat quickened, each pulse echoing in the quiet room. I felt the edges of fear, desire, and anticipation blur into one overwhelming sensation. My reflection seemed to mock me, almost alive, whispering, "You've crossed the line. There's no turning back." I sank deeper into the sofa, mind racing. The persona I had nurtured in secret was no longer a shadow, it was real, tangible, insistent. Every movement, every glance, every heartbeat reminded me of what I had risked, what I had exposed, and what I might lose. Isabella. My secrets. My own sense of control. And yet, the thrill was addictive, impossible to resist. Then, a sound, soft, deliberate, drifted from the hallway. My stomach dropped. Not Isabella, not a neighbor. Someone else. A visitor I hadn't expected. My reflection froze, eyes wide, lips parting slightly, as though aware of the danger before I fully registered it. Heart hammering, I moved toward the door, every step precise, graceful, a reflection of the transformation I had fought to maintain. Peering through the peephole, I couldn't see clearly, but the shadow of someone tall, deliberate, waiting. I swallowed, breath catching, every nerve alight with tension. I could feel the persona I had embraced, the poised, delicate Alex, pushing forward, urging confidence, urging poise. Yet the fear gnawed, a sharp reminder of the stakes. I stepped back, glancing at the mirror one last time. My reflection didn't just show me, it warned me. The eyes, wide and alert, glimmered with the thrill of risk, the excitement of transformation, and the terrifying uncertainty of what was to come. The heels on the floor, the skirt brushing my knees, the delicate blouse clinging in just the right way, it all felt too vivid, too real. The secret life I had lived alone, in whispered moments and stolen nights, was now teetering on the edge of revelation. The knock came again, firmer this time, insistent. My pulse raced. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. The adrenaline surged, mingling with exhilaration, fear, and desire. Should I open it? Should I run? Could I maintain the poise, the delicate grace, the persona Miss Hart had guided me into so fully? Another buzz. My phone lit up with a new message from Miss Hart. Open the door. Face the unknown. Let it shape you further. You are ready to be seen. The words sent a shiver down my spine. My reflection leaned forward, as if urging me, challenging me, daring me to step into the unknown. I realized, with both thrill and terror, that this was the ultimate test. Everything I had become, every risk I had taken, every secret I had guarded, was about to collide with reality. I reached for the doorknob. My hand trembled. The reflection in the mirror caught the motion, and for a moment our eyes, Alex's and mine, locked. One was scared, vulnerable, terrified of exposure. The other was bold, poised, and ready to embrace whatever awaited. The two halves of myself were poised on a knife edge. And then, I heard it. A soft, deliberate voice, impossibly close, saying my name, Alex. I froze. The doorknob rattled in my hand. The sound echoed in the silent apartment like a drumbeat. My reflection widened its eyes, caught between exhilaration and terror. The knock came again, this time urgent, demanding. My mind raced. Should I turn back, hide, retreat into the secret self I had always protected? Or step forward fully, into the persona Miss Hart had coaxed from me, risking everything for the thrill of transformation, exposure, and submission to her guidance? The room felt impossibly small, the air thick with tension. The mirror reflected the poised Alex, trembling yet daring, whispering, "You are ready. Open the door." I exhaled shakily. Fingers tightening on the doorknob, my heart thundered in my chest. Outside, the shadow waited. Inside, the reflection beckoned. And at that precise moment, before the door could open, before fate revealed its hand, the scene froze in perfect suspense. Would the visitor see the real me? Would Isabella discover my secret? Or would Miss Hart's hypnotic control continue to shape my destiny, forcing me deeper into a world I could barely comprehend? The answers hung in the air, unresolved, electric, impossible to predict. The transformation had begun, the thrill and danger intertwined, and the story, my story, was far from over. What would you do if you were in Alex's shoes? Comment below with your predictions. Who's at the door, and what happens next?